It's your Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, July 8th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is here with everything about Cutter Gauthier and everything that happened on day one of the NHL draft.
It was a busy day.
Absolutely. Let's get it going.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here with prospect expert Russ Cohen, who's on Twitter at Sportsology. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You'll keep up to date on all the Flyers news and our episodes. You can also email the show at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. Today, we're going to talk all about day one of the NHL draft with our reaction to the Flyers choosing Cutter Gauthier. We're going to talk about the other picks that night. And of course, we'll wrap up with our gritty thing of the week. Locked On Flyers is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey, wherever you are listening. Hit that subscribe button. You'll get all of our episodes here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And Russ, before we get to your reaction, just quick note, we have two other videos in our feed over on YouTube. One was our more in-depth reaction to the Cutter Gauthier pick, which we recorded, as well as a quick video that I did for the Locked On Network. So you can head over there and watch those as well for more information. But on the scene in Montreal, Russ Cohen, how was your take on how the Flyers pick went?
Yeah, my take was I wasn't shocked because we knew that there was a good chance it could be that.
I mean, I predicted it. I'm just going to throw that out there.
And so I wasn't surprised, and obviously Gauthier wasn't surprised. And so there wasn't much shock in that regard. I think that he was super nervous. That was the first time I'd ever see him nervous like that because I've interviewed him a few times. So, but that's okay. I mean, it's his big day in his life. I think the crowd, the media crowd, liked him. We were getting some fun stuff from him. The Chuck Fletcher connection in him was deep. I think that had actually something to do with the selection. Whether it should or not, that's another discussion for another day. But Cutter's a really, a quality kid, and he'll be a really good player for them.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think I agree with you about his nervousness. I think, if you look at all the clips, he was talking super fast.
Yes.
And repeated some phrases over and over again.
And his hands were going under the couch. Like I could see it. I was right in front of him. I saw the nervousness.
Yeah, I think again, as we said, I think maybe we would have gone in a different direction, but this is a good, solid pick. There were several guys in that range that were going to be solid picks no matter what. He is absolutely one of them. And I think that all of the nervousness and his reaction already has me endeared to him. I think he's going to be a real good addition to the Flyers prospect pool, and I think people are going to like him a lot.
Oh, so you didn't even have to hear that his grandmother was from Philly. You were hooked before
well, that's
that?
part of it. That's all of it. That's
okay.
Part of all of it, with all the things we heard afterwards about his Philadelphia area connection and, stories about his name from Sweden and, the hugs with the family, all of it together. I think it was a really good night for Cutter.
Yeah, the one thing I love about the draft is, there's nothing really pure in this world anymore. No offense, world. It's just the way it is. But these draft prospects are as close to that as you could get.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I did appreciate the fit. I thought he looked really good.
Yep.
Pretty styling out there.
Although I didn't like those hats. I don't like the hats. They remind me of
the draft hats.
Yeah, the draft hats. I didn't like them. That's not his fault.
I thought they're okay. Yeah, it's kind of just a thing that's there, and I never really pay much attention to
Well,
what
it's
those
right.
hats
Here it is.
look
I'm
like.
staring right at them. They're right in my face, right? So I guess that's why I did.
So, other than Cutter Gauthier, from your vantage point, how was the event itself in terms of how the Habs and the NHL ran it?
Oh, the Habs ran it great. It was first class. The video, the people they had there, Marty St. Louis was like the most popular guy there. You could just see how popular hockey is in Montreal. Like, it's just crazy. And that's no slight to Flyers fans. It's number one here, like compared to anything, maybe even compared to people's everyday lives. Like, they just love it. So there was a big buzz. It was sold out. And it's very rare when a draft is sold out. So that's something where you say, okay, that's pretty impressive. I thought they did a nice job with the relatives of Guy Lafleur. That was great. Mike Bossy. I grew up with Mike Bossy. Even though I was a Ranger fan and Mike Bossy killed the Rangers, I still watched enough of him and respected him. And Guy Lafleur, same thing. Just a legend. So that was really well done. They did a nice job. A lot of the teams, but especially the Sharks, memorializing Brian Marchment.
Yeah, I thought that was a real good part of the program.
Nothing like that's ever happened before a draft. Like, that's new territory. And so, and I know some people in the Sharks management, and they were crushed. So that's something to consider. But, and then, as far as the draft went, I knew it would be an exciting draft, but it was crazy town.
It was.
That's the best way I could explain it. People were scrambling, and by people I mean media. So the media was scrambling, running back and forth for about, I want to say, a good 5 minutes. And it was crazy. Like, it's rarely ever been that active for everything, for trades, for announcements, for all kinds of stuff. I almost felt like we were in the movie Airplane. It was just so bizarre. Like, they were, like, I'm running with like 10 media people because, like, Gary Bettman's like, well, we got trades. Okay. And then you got to go back and try and interview prospects. It was a lot.
I think, of course, we will absolutely get to all of that madness in the next segment. But yeah. I do want to talk about sort of the rest of the draft picks in terms of reactions and stuff. Obviously, I think the winner of the night was Isaac Howard with the turtleneck and white suit, and basically just saying, yes, I'm the best looking guy here, so I had to wear the best looking outfit. I think he absolutely won the night on that front. But what was your take on the draft pick reactions?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about Howard. He's just a funny kid. He's a fired up guy. At the combine, for some reason, he had already showered and everything, so he was in like salmon shorts. Like, he's just a free spirit, but he also had an American flag belt. So when he walked by me,
the belt buckle.
Right, the buckle. And I went by him and I said, "Hey, great belt buckle." And he goes, "Thanks." And he was all excited. But yeah, as far as the others, I think too much is being made about Shane Wright and the Habs. Like, the Habs never did indicate to him he was going to be the number one pick. I really don't think Shane Wright harbors big resentment. All players, if you pass them over, are always going to have that "I'm going to show you" attitude. That's sports. That's like always in sports. But Shane Wright's not going to think about it for much until he actually is in the NHL and plays them and tries to score 5 points a game against them.
Exactly. Well, that is a perfect place to tease the next segment, which is the very first thing we're going to talk about is that Shane Wright dropping to 4th overall. But first, we're going to hear about our friends at BetOnline.
BetOnline.net, your number one source for all your sports betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including Major League Baseball, and all the info leading into next year's NFL, NBA, and NHL seasons. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. And betonline.net remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, tennis, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right. So, like we were just talking about, Shane Wright dropped to 4th overall, picked by Seattle, and the Habs picked Jaroslav Slavkovsky. And I think the fans were certainly surprised by the pick that were in the building, but you were there. How was it really in terms of the media reaction, the fan reaction?
Well, the media reaction wasn't totally shocked, only because we had heard the rumors of it, but people like me and others were like, I don't think it's going to happen. We thought maybe they were just playing possum and playing it up to the very end, but they weren't. So they went and selected him. So I wasn't completely shocked. I think, like you said, the fans, it was sort of like a mixed reaction at the beginning because there was some shock. But look, he's a kid with a lot of personality, so he'll win them over in interviews. He is a kid that plays the game at a high level. Whether they put him in the NHL or the AHL this year, we'll see. They could if they want to. They probably will. All those things, that's fine. So as far as that pick went, it wasn't a big deal for me. I would say, Brad Lambert, I felt a little bad about. I think he's got more.
Going back to Shane Wright, though, do you think it was surprising that either Arizona or the Devils didn't take him after he wasn't selected by Montreal?
The argument the Devils are going to give you is, well, we have too many centermen that aren't at 6 foot or more. Like, this has become a big thing now again. And they obviously believe that Simon Nemec will be a number one defenseman. So if he is, okay. So then you got that. Arizona can't give you an answer. I don't know why, but they didn't, and Seattle was thrilled. Obviously.
Oh yeah.
Like
that
they
was
were
clear.
It was just like they won the lottery. Because the Seattle table where I was doing radio and was on the floor, I was right there being able to kind of like see them, and they were thrilled. Like, the whole thing, the way it unfolded, crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the Yotes, just from everything that I'd observed prior and read about, they just were dialed in on Logan Cooley. And I think like once they got to them, they were just like, well, this is what we were going to do. And we're just going to do it in a lot of ways. And Arizona, like, I think their pick later was a little odd. So I think that, there's always a question mark with what they're doing sometimes. But
yeah, what's interesting about that? I would say 4 months ago, there was some talk, hey, maybe Logan Cooley, goes number one. And so like he didn't go number one, but he still went ahead Shane Wright. So like, that was something that was talked about, but it was a few months ago. And so that it gets buried because it's like you start going with, okay, it's going to be, some of these other guys and you forget. But yeah, Cooley's a hell of a player.
Yeah, absolutely. You were mentioning Brad Lambert. I thought there were several guys that dropped a little low relative to expectations in the draft. He is absolutely, I think, the biggest drop. He went 30th overall to Winnipeg. And I think in some ways they got a steal, but like we've been talking about, it was a bit of a risk as well.
Yeah, there's definitely, that's what other teams were thinking. There's definitely some risk involved, but I think that's a good organization. And I think if he goes to Seattle and plays in Seattle this year, that would be the best thing for him. He does well against his own age group. Let him go back with his, with that, and let's see if he can dominate there. If he can, that could really get him back on track because he didn't really put up any points this year. So that hurt him. Like, and he needs a little maturing too. And, sometimes young guys need that.
Yeah, I think the other big surprise for me was Joachim Kemmel going at 17 to Nashville. A lot of people had him kind of in the sort of 7 to 12-ish range.
Yeah.
So the fact that Nashville was able to pick him up at 17, I think was huge for them.
It was a great value for them. I applaud them because there were some teams that were staying away from smaller players. I never really, when he's playing, never really look at him as a smaller player on the ice because he seems to find the open ice and he's got an amazing shot and he's already pretty good two-way. So, yeah, Nashville, it's funny. Nashville does better when they get their homegrown guys to try and be scorers. Because if you noticed, with the exception of Philip Forsberg, most guys that they trade for never seem to score the same way that they did in other places. I don't know why.
Yeah, they are a great development team.
They are.
So I think it's an excellent spot for him.
Yes.
Lakarmaki was picked at 15, which was, I don't think, a huge drop, but enough that it was noticeable to me.
Yeah, it was noticeable, but, again, not the biggest guy. I thought that was great value. Again, has a very high ceiling for goal scoring. And that he may have been the happiest of anybody, though, because his English isn't great, but between the way he was smiling, he just couldn't keep the smile off his face. He also was having trouble with things to say too. Sometimes guys, when they get drafted, are sort of speechless. I know it's an antiquated thing, or you just, it sounds cliche, but he really was. He was one of those guys that was a little speechless.
Yeah, and I think he'll be really happy in Vancouver. I think it's a good spot for him in terms of their system and where he'll fit into the depth chart. I think he'll have real good opportunities there. Another question mark for me, and I apologize, I'm probably going to butcher this, but Ivan Miroshnichenko.
Oh, that's good. You did good.
Going to the Caps at 20. I thought maybe he would be in the 15-ish range.
Yeah, he might have been before everything that's transpired, but
fair enough.
He is very toolsy. He's got great skill. I think he still needs. There's still things he needs to work on. The big question is for him and Urov and guys like that. Are they just going to stay here now because they're here? Maybe they will. Maybe they'll just get their things forwarded. So that's the the bigger question is what happens next. Where do they go next?
Exactly. Were there any guys that you thought were picked way too high that were a bit of a reach?
I think Lamoureux, I think, was a bit in that category.
Maverick Lamoureux, who went to the Yotes at 29. That was the other questionable pick, I thought.
Yeah,
that Arizona had.
But I again, when you have multiples, there is a tendency to kind of take that home run swing and see what you can get from that. And so I think they were trying to do that. Now you noticed, I'm sure, the suits they were all wearing those matching, 21st century blue. I don't know what color blue that is. It was pretty funny though, because I said on air that they obviously shopped, because I didn't see everybody at the beginning, and I said it seems like everybody shopped at the same store that day, and they really did.
They really did. And they had a really cool lining with the Kachina
I didn't see the
drawing
lining
on the inside of the suit. Yeah, it was actually pretty cool. I enjoyed the Arizona attire that they put together. And then I think for me, obviously, we're going to talk about the Chicago trades momentarily, but they used their 7th overall that they got from Ottawa to pick Kevin Korchinski, which I thought was a little high.
Yeah, I think so too. But he's a tremendous offensive talent, and he just is a tireless worker. He's like the last guy off the ice. He's the guy, all of his teammates glow about him. So I think we'll find over time that's not going to be that big of a deal.
All right. So speaking of those trades, I think a big question a lot of people were asking, what exactly is Chicago doing here? They traded DeBrincat to Ottawa for a first, a second, and next year's third. They took Peter Mrazek from the Leafs and traded Kirby Dach to Montreal.
Well, the Kirby Dach one, they got good value for that, and I feel like they I don't know if they're going to be so self-aware that they realize, hey, we rushed this kid, and maybe the best thing we can do is put him on, give him another fresh start somewhere, because he shouldn't have been playing in the NHL at the time they had him playing there. So there's that. They did kind of go, scorched earth a little bit. But the one thing they did do right was when they got Frank Nazar, because that was sort of what they were looking for in the draft. So Chicago is weird. They were all over the place. But, the tell is when you get Peter Mrazek to be your goalie, you're not going to be a successful team, and they know that. So that's pretty much where you're at with that.
I think that, they certainly turned a lot of heads with those deals to get into the first round. And then, of course, Montreal making that splash as well.
Yes. But I talked about that. I told you Montreal was going to do other things to make a splash, because there was no way you were going to make 14 picks.
Oh, of course. Of course. All right. I think, aside from that, there were some cap dump moves, Cassian to Arizona.
Assassination was very sad.
Yes.
It's over. It's over.
I think, the other 2, maybe 3 big pieces of news around the draft. Georgiev is now with the Avalanche.
They did a great
in that trade. That was a good deal.
That's a great deal for them. I mean, I know the Rangers got this basket of picks, and on the surface it seems good. They probably should have just gotten 1 second-round pick and not all these other picks that may never turn out, because Georgiev is a heck of a goalie, and Sakic made a point of saying, he's our number 1. Like, this is why we did this. And I don't blame him. I mean, I've seen enough of Georgiev where I know he has that ability. So he may have gotten a more stable goalie than Darcy Kemper, and he saved money on the cap.
Speaking of cap, Letang resigns in Pittsburgh, 6 years, $6.1 million on.
And he announced a pick, right? Like that, the fix was in
right,
on that.
Exactly.
Because Hextall was telling us.
Hextall said that.
Yeah, Hextall was telling us the day before, I feel really good about this. I'm pretty sure he's going to get locked up. So he knew Letang was there already. This is typical Ron Hextall, playing sleight of hand. He just does it all the time.
Yeah, and then Marc-Andre Fleury signed a 1-year deal with the Wild, so he'll be back in Minnesota.
I thought it was 2. I thought that ended up being a 2-year deal.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, it was initially supposed to be 1, and it turned into 2. I think that's a good deal. I don't know if Cam Talbot thinks it's a good deal, but we'll find out.
Yeah, we will. All right, we are going to preview today, day 2 of the draft, and just talk about a couple other little things before we wrap up the week coming up next. All right, Russ, it's day 2 of the draft. Flyers did not make any moves on day 1 to get into the second round as of Friday morning. So we have 1 pick in each of the other remaining rounds. And Chuck Fletcher, I don't know if anything will happen, but it seems like he wants to try and make something happen. And there may be some exchanges of picks.
There's definitely going to be some exchanges of picks. I mean, when I was talking to him, he made a pretty strong play for that. So I think at some point, maybe they package up their 6th and 7th. They get more 2023 picks because that's where their head's at. Fine, whatever. But I think something like that's going to go on. Now, if there's a player they want and, they're in the 5th round, they might fool around with that too to get a player they want. With that next pick of theirs, though, Rieger Lorenz, who I spoke to at the Combine, had a great interview with the Flyers. And so that's a guy fans out there could look for and see he could be one of the targets for them. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how today goes. Of course, we'll be talking all about it on Monday's show when we wrap up the draft in its entirety. But for now, as of now, the next pick that the Flyers have is the 3rd round pick, the 69th overall.
And they're expected to keep that. We don't think anything's happening with that.
Yeah, I would expect that as well. And aside from that, we also got the NHL schedule release amongst everything
I had
around the
no idea
draft.
the schedule was released. I haven't looked at the schedule. Like, just you know
Well,
what? Just wake me up and tell me when there's games, and I'll go to the rink. Like, that's it. It's summertime. Like, I'm not even thinking about it.
Well, the Flyers open up October 13th at home against the New Jersey Devils. I counted, we've got 12 back-to-backs over the season, which isn't
people
too
were
bad.
whining about that though. But here's the
That
funny
seems
thing.
pretty normal.
I know you should never whine. Flyers fans and media should never whine about the back-to-backs that they have, because they have one of the easiest travel schedules of any team in the league based on where they're located. Dallas Stars have one of the worst every year based on the time zones and everything else. So, don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. Of course, there's a usual road trip out west around New Year's.
Yeah.
There's the All-Star break at the end of February.
There's always the
that
dreaded Western Canadian trip. That's always the dreaded one.
There is, although I think I might luck out, and I currently have plans to be on the West Coast during that trip, so I will have
there you go.
actually normal times to watch that game. So that turned out pretty well for me, I think. But we're just going to wrap up with our gritty thing of the week. There's a couple of them. And I think that your notion of it being summer and not wanting to think about next fall's games, Gritty is in the same mentality, posting an out of office note, floating in the pool, which sounds delightful. I think Gritty has the right idea.
Yeah, except if Gritty goes in the pool, it's going to take Gritty like 5 hours to dry. But,
Yes.
So
well,
I don't
trust me, those things could use washings. So I think it's a good thing.
Ow, wait, wow. I'm pretty sure
I have managed professional sports team mascots before and been responsible for cleaning those costumes.
And they're pretty stinky. Yeah.
Pretty stinky.
Although I've heard that the Gritty one has sort of like circulating air in it and stuff.
Well, I hope so, for everybody's sake. All right, one more thing. There was an artist who posted a Kachinafication of all of the different teams' mascots, and the Flyers one is actually pretty freaking cool. So you should check that out. You should check all of them out. But I think that turning all of the mascots into a Kachina style drawing was a very clever idea.
Is Youppi in there?
I believe so.
Yeah, because Youppi was at the rink yesterday. I still like Youppi because Youppi is like the only mascot that after his baseball team basically dissolves, he's still got another job. Like most mascots, that's it. They usually hang it up.
Exactly. That was such a cool thing that the Habs did, actually. I really like that. All right, that will do it for today's show. Like I said, we'll be back Monday with a full draft recap with day 2 notes. We'll have your latest Flyers news and our nemesis of the week. Let us know what you think about the Flyers draft this year. Send in your comments and your mailbag questions via Twitter at LockedOnFlyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or drop a comment over on YouTube. I am Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
You made us your first listen. Now make your second listen Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a daily 30-minute podcast on all things NHL all year long. Stay up to date on everything in the hockey world. Locked On NHL, your daily 30-minute NHL podcast. Have a great weekend, everyone.